Okay, welcome back to the Slippery Slope podcast. I'm Jay Fallon, obviously, and today I'm going to be talking about what, in my opinion, one of the most powerful acts of judicial leadership I've seen in a long time. Actually, I think one of the most powerful acts I've ever seen, ever heard of. A Queensland judge stopped a courtroom, not for an objection and not for a procedural issue, but for 5 minutes of silence. So why did he do this? Because a defense barrister tried to talk down a grown man's sexual act with a 14-year-old child by saying it only lasted 5 minutes. Yeah, fairly despicable wording, really. And the judge, acting judge Ryan Haddrick, refused to let that narrative stand. So today, I want to honour this judge because, I mean, I've said several times about judges who, in my opinion, have made the wrong decision, or you got to question the decisions that the judges or magistrates have come to. This, I think, needs to be talked about. This judge, in my opinion, for this example, needs to be honoured. And it exposes, I think, the dangerous minimisation attempted by the defence. And it reminds everyone why moral clarity matters. Like I said, I'm Jay Fallon, and this is the Slippery Slope podcast.
Got my eyes straight ahead, got my head in the game. With the red light on, I'm just waiting for the change. Keep my head down low.
Okay, so what happened? During sentencing submissions, defense barrister Damien Gates, defense barrister, he's argued that his 35-year-old client, 35, had sex with a 14-year-old girl for 5 minutes, not more than that, and then stopped because he realized it was wrong. He called it poor impulse control. So let's be blunt, very blunt. This is not impulse control. This is a grown man sexually abusing a child. The judge knows this. So you've got this moment that Gates tried to frame the duration as some kind of mitigating factor. Judge Haddrick cuts him off. He says, sit down for a second. Just sit down for a second. Then he goes on and says, in fact, sit down for 5 minutes starting now. He forces the whole courtroom, the entire courtroom, lawyers, staff, gallery, to sit in silence for the same length of time the offender assaulted the child. That is leadership. I've said numerous times about how Queensland, how Australia lacks leadership when it comes to our courtrooms, when it comes to our police. This, in my opinion, is leadership. This is moral clarity. This is a judge refusing to let language distort reality. So, after the silence, Judge Haddrick explained, the proposition I am putting through to you and through to your client is that in 5 minutes, engaging in sexual conduct with a 14-year-old, the penny should have dropped before it occurred. And then he says this line, which I think cuts through any excuse. That's a long time to continue engaging in a sexual act while you know the wrongness of that conduct. This is the heart of the issue. 5 minutes is not a momentary lapse. 5 minutes is not poor impulse control. 5 minutes is a deliberate act of child sexual abuse. I keep saying sexual abuse. This is going to be demonetized, I would say, on YouTube. But I believe it's important to say the actual and not try and minimize. You know, a lot of people say, or SA and all this thing because they don't want to get demonetized. No, I get that. But I think it's important to actually say the words. Let's not be afraid to be demonetized sometimes if you're actually talking about things that are truthful and naming these things out loud. You know, YouTube wants us to keep, to sterilize things, and our governments don't want us to talk about things. They want us to gloss over some of these things. We need to say the whole sentence, the whole narrative, out loud. So the judge refused to let the defense sanitize it. This is what this is what our government and YouTube and things like that. That's what they do. They sanitize everything. What the defense attempted is something I think we all repeatedly see over the last couple of years. We see in within courtrooms, whether it's judges, magistrates, we see this minimization, this reframing, a narrative manipulation. It's the slow erosion of moral clarity inside the justice system. The defense wasn't arguing innocence. No, the defense, they were arguing less guilt, as if the duration of the abuse, it's abuse. So as if the duration of the abuse somehow softens the horror of it. This is the slippery slope. It was only 5 minutes. He stopped himself. It wasn't that bad, and he realized it was wrong. These arguments don't defend justice, they defend the offender. And Judge Haddrick refused to participate. In a courtroom, silence, it, it's fairly rare in some things, and it kind of gets uncomfortable. When I was in a courtroom, when I was a police officer, and sometimes when I was in the early days when I was still doing general duties, and I was on court duty and I have to escort prisoners in through from the watch house and in through to the courts. It was always a little uncomfortable in there, and it's it's confrontational. So when you've got a judge forcing silence, it is very uncomfortable. It's confrontational. It forces reflection. By ordering 5 minutes of silence, Judge Haddrick did something fairly profound, I believe. He made everyone feel you have to sit back and you feel the weight of what the defense was trying to minimize. 5 minutes is not just a short period of time. He turned the abstract into the concrete. He turned a number, 5 minutes, into an experience. You're sitting there for 5 minutes and you realize, when you're thinking about it, you're realizing just how long it is, just how many things you can get done. He forced the courtroom to sit inside the horror of that time frame. It's not really theatrics. It was moral instruction. It was a judge saying, do not dare to trivialize the suffering of a child, which our society does far too often, and we've seen that in our judicial system far too often. Scripture Scripture teaches that justice is not merely legal, it is moral. Proverbs tells us the Lord detests lying lips. Minimization is a form of lying. It's a distortion of truth. It's an attempt to reshape evil into something palatable, which isn't just happening in Australia, it's happening worldwide. We want to reshape evil into something else that we can digest, palatable. Amos condemns those who turn justice into bitterness and casts righteousness to the ground. That's what happens when lawyers try to soften the reality of child sexual abuse. Judge Haddrick's silence was a rebuke, not just legally, but morally. He refused to let the vulnerable be overshadowed by clever phrasing, a sophist phrasing, if you were. He refused to let evil be dressed up as a misunderstanding. Evil is evil. He refused to let the courtroom slide down the slope of moral relativism. This is why I'm talking about today. In a time when many judges are criticized for being too lenient or too detached, this judge demonstrated courage. He didn't shout, he didn't grandstand, he didn't moralize. He simply made the courtroom sit in the same silence the child endured. That is honorable. That is righteous. That is leadership. And we need more of this type of leadership in Australia. Judge Ryan Haddrick deserves recognition for this act because he defended truth when someone else was trying to distort it. This podcast exists to expose the slippery slopes in our institutions, also so I can just go and rant every now and then when I want to. The places where truth gets bent, where narratives replace reality, and where moral clarity is lost. But today, I want to highlight someone who stood firm, a judge who refused to let a child's suffering be minimized, a judge who refused to let the language become a shield for evil, and a judge who reminded everyone that justice requires courage. 5 minutes of silence, 5 minutes of truth, 5 minutes that cut through all the BS, all the excuses. Of course, this is all just my opinion. I'm Jay Fallon, and thanks for listening to the Slippery Slope podcast.
They just fuel a desire that will take me higher. I'm on fire because nothing's going